Everybody, welcome back to the musical tour of the Spiral. My name is Nelson Everhart. Today, we got something different because the world of Wintertusk was not written by yours truly. I actually got a call from one of the head marketing guys at the time. Hi, Fred, if you're listening. Fred called me up and wanted to tell me personally that a celebrity composer was going to be doing Wintertusk. I was a little bummed just because I loved Grizzleheim, thought it was really successful, and would have liked to compose for it, obviously, but I was also a little concerned. Did I do something wrong? Was I not performing to my potential in the eyes of the company? But no, he assured me that they were still really happy with me and my work, and this was just going to be like a promotional thing. So I was happy for the game to be getting this exciting new development. I was not told who the celebrity composer was. I had hoped to get to work with this person to try to act as sort of the ambassador or the curator of the musical vibe in Wizard 101. I thought I'd had a little bit to add there, but didn't hold out much hope for that. I've worked with, higher profile composers before, and generally speaking, they're really busy and they're not super interested in other people's input. I usually feel the same way, so I understand that totally. I did a video game version of the TV show Alias, which was composed by Michael Giacchino, and I did get to talk with him once kind of at the beginning of the project to just pick his brain for some general ideas, but that was pretty much the last that I had heard from him. It's pretty typical in the industry. Everybody's sort of got their team and their way that they're used to working, and that's kind of how they want to do it. So I learned along with the rest of the world that the celebrity composer was Nick Jonas, and I found that news a little confusing. I mean, I loved grooving along with Mbop in the 2000s and stuff, but I was like, is that guy from a pop world really getting into the video game? I'm kidding. I knew who the Jonas Brothers were, but I just didn't know that he was kind of into this writing. So I'm not here to disparage Mr. Jonas's work. In fact, I've seen numerous comments that it's some people's favorite music in the game. So I mean, that's great. I can only cheer on, somebody trying to make the game more visible. So I think I figured out Joe was like 18 or 19 when he wrote this score, and he did say that it was the first time that he had written music in this style for a game. So while I'm not disparaging his work, everybody's pretty green at that age, myself included. So I'm giving a musical tour of the Spiral, and the subject of Wintertusk was sort of hard for me to figure out what to do. Do I not bother with it because I can't really give any insight into the process? Do I just, listen and review it? What I decided to do was I would cover one of my favorite tracks from Wintertusk, which is Hrundel Fjord. I think that's how you say it, and present some of Joe's ideas through my filter just for the educational and scholarly component of it. The video is not monetized. I'm not trying to make any money on material that isn't mine. Just here for the lulz, as it were. So in the same way that you find YouTube channels that have this music on there, I'm doing the same thing. I do want to play the original track so it's more obvious what I'm referring to. So here is the Hrundel Fjord theme. I haven't done anything to it. I did rip it off YouTube though, so I don't know how close it is to the original file itself. So here is Nick Jonas's Hrundel Fjord from Wintertusk. That's a crazy looking waveform that I don't even understand. My bet is a YouTube thing. All right, so I have actually completed Wintertusk, unlike a lot of the videos that I cover past Arc 1. So I got to experience the tune the way everybody experiences my music. And it was a breath of fresh air for me because it's something that I didn't already know how it was going to go, even if it's the first time I'm listening to it. And there were a lot of things about it that I liked. First of all, I loved that it took its time developing through the piece. Along the same lines, the brooding nature of the track is a really good fit for that monochrome, snowy environment. It's a little bleak and a little depressing. And another thing I liked, the chords in that second half, they're really interesting chords. So the chords don't follow the general principles of voice leading, which is where you're trying to move smoothly between the different voicings. But the more parallel idea is sort of a throwback to Gregorian chanting, uses that same parallel-y feel. And because we're in this sort of droney vibe, it works really well. So in looking at how I would do something different, I analyzed about 5 areas. Number one, something I've noticed from novice composers in a pseudo-orchestral vibe is that they're a little shy to present their ideas too obviously. A lot of it's groove and feel and atmosphere, which is fine. Holding back melodies doesn't really make the tune as memorable and compelling as it could be. You know, bringing out those melodies, putting them up front. So that's the first thing I wanted to address. So number 2, having the mystical droning vibe go on too long is a little dangerous in a track that's going to loop. So I wanted to add some more sections that developed some of the ideas and just gave some variety in the track. So when it loops around a million times, you're going to break up the monotony a bit. Number 3, those interesting chords in the second half, they tend to plot a bit because it's sort of one chord per bar. It gets a little predictable. It makes a piece that's already a little static feel even more so. Number 4, the track is left very much unresolved and it doesn't loop super cleanly. And so that's sort of the conceit of the looping music composer, is that you have to try to convince the listener that this is all sort of through composed the whole way. So I did want it to loop more cleanly. I did put an ending at the end of this track, but it could have looped around to the beginning again. Number 5, dynamics. I've said a million times that I find dynamics the most interesting thing about music. It needs some highs so that the lows feel good, and it needs some lows so that the highs feel good. They're defined by each other, right? You don't know what's super exciting unless there's something that's a little lower energy, and you don't know something that's sort of low and cooking unless there's some higher energy in the piece. So I try to build dynamics into all of my tracks. So those are the 5 core concepts that I was working with. I'll take you through my session now and show you what I'm doing. This is If I Wrote Hrundel Fjord. And there's the knot loop. I started it pretty much like Joe did, with that slower build up, cold, mystical, snowy field, very, not much going on. I did really like these wind chimes and fish chimes. I'm not sure what kind of instrument that really is. It's from Cineperk. Use Joe's melody here. So there's an example of me trying to inject more dynamics into it, having little hits to define a new section a little bit better. And I started out with the strings, the low string pattern here, and found that I wanted a little bit more definition. So I put a marimba in there. I tried a lot of different things in this section. Put the timps in there as well. Just wanted a little bit more kind of battle in there, I guess. I did want to pull some of the approach to Grizzleheim that I use, so that's why I'm using some of the flutes. Going a little bit minimalist, tribal, and kind of, ancient folk approach here. I did use some of the instruments that I used in Grizzleheim. The oud. Even though that's a Middle Eastern instrument, I used it in Grizzleheim to create the general groove, but I wound up using a lot more to get it to sort of speak through those bigger sections. So I did discover a new instrument, tagelharpa, a talharpa, pronounced something like that, and it's from Northern Europe. It sounds sort of like a hollow cello a little bit. It's a very sort of boxy, bowed sound, and it's pretty rough around the edges. I pulled in another Middle Eastern sound to double it up. I don't know if I've talked about this sound. I picked it up for a recent world where I wanted some low, devilish vocals, and as you can tell by the art, it fits very well into that sort of Northern European, Scandinavian kind of sounds here. There's a few different patches in this library, but the omen chant, really kind of mystical, druidic kind of chanting. I know there's always a lot of conspiracies when I put vocals in music. People want to know what they're saying. Sorry, but I didn't have time to assign any meaning or design a language around that. Next time. That section doesn't lend itself to a lot of melody, which is why I put the omen vocals in there as kind of answers to the chords changing around. But I knew I wanted to get into the melody as fast as I can. So I built a melody here and brought in a lot more harmony. That I based a lot on the, da-na-na-na. It's sort of a answer to that, kind of a B section. It's using some of the same rhythms and patterns, but saying something new. And we change keys there. Then I really like this transition back into the da-na-na-na, but developing that idea a little bit more. Changing chords behind it. And then warming it up a little bit before heading back to the kind of darker tonalities. And then right about here is where I'm feeling, okay, we've left the war drums behind. That tribal drums track is from the Damage 2 library from Heaviosity. And these are nice, big, heavy, low-pitched percussion. So taking that same melody to a new chord, just giving it some direction. Bringing back in the cello patterns. Usually when we get around 2 minutes, my lizard brain is looking to bring back elements from the beginning of the tune. There's those fish chimes again. So I wanted to call this library out. Extant Audio has a couple libraries that I really love using for more Celtic-inspired tracks. This is obviously a low Irish whistle. And this library is called O'Malley's Irish Whistles. This is the hobbyist version. I think there's a more professional version of the library that's got even more control. Also from Extant, I've used the uilleann pipes. It is a wonder I can find anything in my library. There we go. And this is Dickie Deegan's uilleann pipes. And I love the sound of the uilleann pipes when I'm doing something that's more kind of specifically Celtic. That's another kind of droney sound that you can work into this kind of vibe. Oh, that's funny. I meant to call it the low whistle and I typed it as the Lou whistle, which is a much different preposition. Yeah, so there you go. My take on Hrundel Fjord. How do you guys feel I did with my original goals here? Let me know down in the comments. I have got a few more remix tracks lined up, and I do have a couple more projects that are a little bit different than the kind of standard offering in a direction that I think most people find interesting. Here's a hint. It involves a lot of unheard stuff. Yep, that's all I got for you today. See you soon.